now. Good morning, everybody. Apologies, I had a few technical difficulties there, and welcome to this morning webinar. I am Chloe Tetro. I'm the coaching lead here with Ready Care. Today, we're going to be looking at the topic of how to lose weight quickly and, most importantly, sustainably. World Obesity Day was on the 4th, and for this morning, I'm going to basically just introduce a little bit around the statistics of world obesity and the epidemic of it, and more importantly, my hope and my wish for this morning is to present the statistics as living people, as people with backgrounds, families, parents, stories, narratives that aren't just statistics, and to hopefully start to encourage a conversation that moves beyond what I absolutely hate, the eat less, move more. Because what you'll come to find this morning is it is not that simple, and weight gain is very, very implemented in lots of things outside of what individuals get blamed for, i.e. eat less, move away from the table, and all these terrible things that people have been told for decades, hundreds of years, maybe, well, decades. The approach I'll also take is in and around the sustainability aspect of it. So we've all either known people or personally experienced the ability to lose weight quickly, which is the first part of the name of this webinar, but oftentimes with the second part of the sentence, which they'll say, but of course, it all came back and brought friends along the way. So I'd like to give a little bit of an introduction on some of the ways that sustainability can be found with all of that. It's a word that gets bandied around, but where health and longevity is concerned, it's exceedingly important to think of the long game as opposed to the short game. Now, my slides are not going to work this morning, hence the little few minutes of, or 1 or 2 minutes of being a bit behind. So I do apologize. You will just have to see my face this morning. So the epidemic, first of all, and let's look at it in terms of World Obesity Day, the numbers involved. What are we actually looking at here? What is the crisis? So the obesity rates at the moment are higher than they have ever been. The latest statistics from last year's World Obesity Day show that more than 1 billion, it's a B, 1 billion people worldwide are currently living with obesity. And out of that figure, shockingly enough, that includes 159 million, with an M, children. Most of those were under the age of 12. So that is a very, very scary statistic when we look at the long-term impacts of cardiovascular health, psychological health, and all of the different facets that go along with, I just think of a small child, 4 or 5 years old, already in that bracket. So by 2035, so 10 years from now, more than half of the world's population is projected to be overweight or obese. And if you look at the global economic cost, it's expected to reach 4.3 trillion annually. So again, these are numbers, right? They have real life implications. And for those in, let's say, the NHS, people that we work with across in the UK, there starts to be a very clear picture of how that can really affect, the medical system's capabilities of addressing and supporting that large scale chronic lifestyle illnesses. And on an individual bracket, whether it be ourselves, friends, family, lives are really, really changed through obesity. Now, I mentioned some of the psychological and emotional factors which never make it onto these types of statistics, but these are the day in, day out lived experience of, what it feels like day in, day out, the type of stories that we tell ourselves. And in this webinar, I'll address how the type of stories we tell ourselves about ourselves really are the greatest predicators, scientifically, psychologically, behaviorally speaking, for how we're likely to behave in future, and why that's really, really important. So why obesity is a whole person difficulty. It's not just about food. It is not just about calories in, calories out, eat less, move more. It's not about that. And in fact, over the last 3.5 years working with ReadyCare, I've worked with hundreds, if not more, I would say, going into the thousands, where 99% of those individuals' hormones were the greatest predicator of where they found themselves in either pre-diabetes or diabetes or any of the other associated conditions that go with obesity. The hormonal aspect, which we'll really dive into today, is the main kind of component element. So over 80% of dieters regain the weight they lose within a year. Now that is a fact. It is, I think, proven. Let me just check. Yes, study 2018, Hall and Cahan. But I mean, we can see that even just through chatting to people along the way. It's incredibly difficult because essentially the root cause most of the time is not being addressed. Doing hours and hours and hours of cardio at the gym, being in a massive, massive calorie deficit might work for a short space of time, but so would chaining yourself to a wall in a basement. Like, it's not about the weight and the punishment onto the body that it can maintain for a short amount of time. It's how do you sustain that without making the mistake of associating any healthy type behaviors with the terrible feelings that go along with punishing yourself into weight loss. And that is a huge, huge aspect of the psychology involved in why the weight comes back, is if we overdo the punishment aspect, where we talk really horrifically about ourselves in ways that we would absolutely hate anyone to hear our thought bubbles. If we essentially bully ourselves, we will also not just become the bully, but the victim as well. And basically what that feels like is any association with weight loss, health, longevity, fitness now becomes associated with feeling bad, feeling, oh God, that was terrible. I never want to go back to that headspace I was in when I was XYZ. And that's exceedingly common. The difference in a sustainable way that we will discuss is how do you change that association with confidence? I feel, oh, those changes made me feel so confident. I feel so proud of myself. I feel the healthiest I've ever been. I feel the most balanced I've ever been. That's one that I hear a lot from clients. So talk about the hormonal aspects of things. Now, I mentioned hormones as one. The primary one I'll discuss today, which is the one that we chat about at every single session with clients, is insulin, right? Insulin is a hormone. It's not just a hormone that people with diabetes have to deal with. It's a hormone that we all have to deal with. When it's doing its job, it's fantastic. When it is out of whack, it is the number one driver of fat storage, insulin. So every time we eat carbohydrates, things like potatoes, rice, pastas, porridge, whole grain cereals, bananas, foods that we might think, wait now, are they not supposed to be health foods? Pin that thought. Every time that we eat these foods, they break down to glucose in the system, they make our blood sugars rise. So then the body, to make sure that we keep ticking over and that the blood is circulating and doesn't become jam, it releases insulin, which then tells the cells to store excess sugar as fat in the process of bringing down those blood sugars. So blood sugars rise with particular food. Body secretes a hormone, which is meant to get the blood sugars down, but the hormone has a secondary action, which is telling the cells to store excess sugar as fat. So over time, high insulin levels make fat loss incredibly difficult. It's essentially like trying to walk up a muddy slope. When it's lashing rain, you feel like you have to work extra, extra hard to get half of the results. And that's incredibly demoralizing. So it's telling the body to store fat instead of burning it. Now, you might find yourself going, okay, what if I bring my calories way down, but I'm still having potatoes, I'm still having all these different types of foods? It will be incredibly difficult. And the self-messaging that's going to go along with that is, God, what's wrong with me that I just can't make this work? There must be something wrong with me. Or I'm starving, which of course you would be if you're in a massive, massive calorie deficit. There must be something wrong with me that I can't, go 4 hours without eating. Now, one of the things that happens is when there is an unhealthy weight loss, which happens when a lot of crash and yo-yo dieting happens, is it also boosts another hormone, ghrelin. So ghrelin is the hormone responsible for your hunger. So you will find yourself much, much, much more hungry and less full. So you have a two-way effect. Not only are you having to work extra hard if your insulin is still up, because the types of foods that you're having are the ones that are bringing your insulin levels up. You're having to work extra hard, go to the gym, go, oh, jeepers, I'm going to have 800 calories today. Oh, I looked at a crisp, I'm the worst person in the world. These type of things. It is perpetuating a cycle of absolutely crushing your self-esteem, crushing your self-confidence, but it's also not addressing the core problems, which have nothing to do with you as an individual, nothing to do with you as a failure or any of the awful things that we say to ourselves. What it has to do is the hormones that are pumping through your system are going totally against what you're trying to achieve. Now, that is something that is not as widely known in the population. It's not as widely spoken about, but is the primary driver of fat storage. So when you go to the root cause, which is your body's difficulty with processing this huge amount of insulin in the system, which is not only screaming above the other hormones and not letting them send their messages adequately to regulate your appetite, regulate your hunger levels. Some people have huge hunger, some people have no hunger whatsoever. The problem is the insulin is skewing those signals. You will continue to store fat, or it will be incredibly difficult to lose the weight that you do have, and your experience will be rubbish. So here's an alternative. Here's the problem, here's the solution. So lowering carbohydrates, basically, it is as simple as that. Think of it like a food intolerance, in the same way that if you found out in the morning that you had a peanut allergy, just because you traveled around with an EpiPen doesn't mean that you'll say, oh, look, I'll have a bar of Snickers. It's as simple as that. Your body is having difficulty with certain foods. The best way to counteract that is to bring those certain foods down. So lowering your carbohydrate intake reduces your insulin secretion. So the body then will shift from burning glucose to start to burning fat, right? That's something that happens when you lower your carbohydrates, which would usually break down to sugars in your system, and your body will utilize it for energy. Most of the time that system's not working super well when there's difficulty with insulin, so you're more likely to find yourself tired anyway. So that system's not particularly working for you. So what's the backup system? So if you think about how humans survived prior to the agricultural revolution and an availability of grain type foods, carbohydrate type foods all year round, what did the brain survive on? Periods with no grains. So what did we do? So what we did is survive off proteins and fats. Fats is your brain's preferred mode of energy. You actually get more energy from fats than you do from sugars. What happens is it's a more stable energy. Not only will it reduce your insulin levels because now you don't have the sugars going in, but it will also mean that your energy system is going to work a little bit better. As a further knock-on effect, you're now going to get yourself out of the category of cardiovascular disease risk. You're going to bring down your blood pressure, you're going to bring down your cholesterol, bring down any markers towards non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Why? Because insulin, again, root cause there where that's concerned. And for any women that are suffering polycystic ovarian syndrome and finding it very difficult to lose weight, same mechanism, exact same mechanism, difficulty with insulin. Once the carbohydrates come down, the body can then release weight, utilize fats adequately, and utilize fat for energy. So you have a two-way effect here. Not only are you able to have more energy and look after all the bits I mentioned, but even at rest, your body now has to use the fat stores to keep the show ticking over. So even at rest, you will be burning extra. So up to 250 more calories per day are burnt at rest. And that's according to a 2018 study in the BMG, which sounds like the BFG, but it's not. So 2018 study found that not only did you burn more calories at rest, but people also eat up to 500 calories less per day because their hunger hormone, satiation hormone is now working and balancing. It means that the types of foods that they're having have higher fat levels, which keeps us fuller for longer. Now, you will not put on fat. In fact, 53 randomized trials found that low carb diets led to greater fat loss than low fat diets. And we've been pumped with this information since the 80s with a crook of a study that has been totally disproven since, that we absolutely need to avoid eggs, butter, meat, the foods that, human beings survived on for time immemorial, that never caused any difficulty up until, they found it in this study. And all of a sudden, all of these things are going up. Cardiovascular disease is going up, diabetes is going up, obesity is going up, since we decided to cut out the foods that apparently are responsible for it and keep eating the carbohydrates. So low carb dieters lost up to 10% of their body weight within 3 to 6 months. Now, that is absolutely fantastic. But not only that, but there's less hunger, more energy, greater metabolic flexibility. So think of it as being able to lose weight even at rest. And that is super handy for anyone who has mobility issues. I work with a lot of people with severe arthritis, foot injuries, that just are not able to get out as much. And it still works. It will still absolutely work because you're working with hormones and the metabolism. So if you're able to see that you are losing weight, you don't have to punish yourself to do so. You don't have to speak nastily to yourself to do so. You find yourself less hungry. You're not about to tear somebody's hair off because you're so hungry and they're looking at you and saying something you think, just go away. None of these things happen with a low carb diet. You are not feeling hungry at any point, and most of the time people's energy regulates. So how fast can you lose weight? First 1 to 2 weeks, rapid loss, up to 3 to 7 pounds, depending on the weight that you started with. Now, a lot of that is going to be water weight. It is not the sustainable type that you will have each time. Week 3 to week 8, consistent fat loss of 1 to 2 pounds per week. Now, as I said before, people are capable of doing that in lots of different ways, whether that be upping your exercise and bringing down your calories. I'm just letting you know that without doing those things, you will still get a consistent fat loss of 1 to 2 pounds per week. Now, 3 to 6 month period, we're getting into the sustainability aspect of it here. Sustainable weight loss of 10 to 15% of body weight in overweight individuals, 1 year plus, which is a lot of the people that I would still be in contact with from clients. Studies show long-term adherence. That's a 2007 study shows long-term adherence leads to sustained weight loss and metabolic health improvement overall. So why is it sustainable? It regulates your hunger hormones. It prevents energy crashes. It boosts your fat metabolism even at rest. It protects your muscle mass. It also will protect you from all of the cardiovascular disease and nasties that could be coming down the line. So what you eat on these types of low-carb diets? Eat things like, if it's swam, crawl, flew, it's good to go if you're not a vegetarian. So eggs, butter, fish, Greek yogurt instead of porridge, things like avocados, nuts, oil, butter, anything that's above ground vegetables are totally fine to have. And it's not that you never have to have things like breads, pastas, rice, potatoes, porridge. It just means to really, really decrease the amount of it. Now, from a more psychological factor, and I'll speed up now because I know I'm at the 20-minute mark, and if you do have questions, please do pop them in. So the greatest teller of future behaviors, and I say this with, the 5 years of coaching, personal coaching with neuroscience backing, the greatest indicator, and this is according to lots of different studies, one particularly here that I'm quoting is the 2014 study done by Wood et al. People act in alignment with who they believe themselves to be. I'll say that again. People act in alignment with who they believe themselves to be. If you say to yourself every single day, I'm just not the type of person that can do that, that is exactly how your behaviors will match from the inside out, who you believe yourself to be. is how your behaviors will try to match that, to keep your self-image stable. Now, the difficulty in that is that we start picking up lots of messages about who we are, what we're capable of from the time we're tiny doonchi babies. It is just the nature of being human. Now, where the adult component part of that and where the power can come back into it a little bit is realizing the absolute power that the way that you speak about yourself has on your impact, your ability to change your situation, the ability to open up things to be different for yourself. If you start to just practice, and you might feel like the goofiest person on earth just practicing this, if you start by practicing saying, I can actually do this, I know that I can, and force yourself to look for examples, right? Whatever it may be that day, if you took the stairs instead of the lift, if you decided, I'm not going to have that biscuit, give yourself as many examples of you doing the things that you're looking to change out, because when you believe yourself to be a person that can't, you will think up of examples very, very quickly. When you're trying to change to your self-image, you need to put a little bit more notice and awareness into it at the beginning stages, and you will soon start to bank evidence every single day. If you did a shop that you're proud of, go, I'm actually becoming the type of person that looks after their health. It doesn't have to be delusional. I was trying to think of a way to put it. It doesn't need to be delusional. I'm not all about the kind of toxic positivity affirmation type of thing. But basically, it's knowing that if you sense yourself, if you have awareness of yourself doing these changes, you are confirming to yourself every time that actually you are the type of person that is becoming healthy. And if becoming is easier than are for now, you can use that. That's going to make you feel really proud of yourself, and it's going to boost your dopamine. Now, I always bang on about dopamine because essentially I talk a lot about habits, and dopamine is implemented in habits, big O. What it does is it makes you want to repeat a behavior. Dopamine is called not only the pleasure-seeking hormone, but also the addiction hormone. So in the inverse, it works because you feel good, you want to repeat, you feel good, you want to repeat. It can work for you as well. Every time that you notice that you're making positive changes, let your brain know. It'll get that, I do feel quite good about myself. And you're more likely to want to repeat. Things don't have to be perfect. There is no benchmark here outside of yourself for your own health. There is no, it needs to be absolutely perfect, because perfection just does not exist. And if you set yourself up for perfection, you're probably going to set yourself up for a big disappointment, because it's very difficult to achieve that. As human beings, we're fallible. So to kind of summarize and recap, an awful lot of weight difficulty, be it for yourself or someone that you care about in your life, is predicated by hormones, particularly the hormone insulin, which is a fat storage hormone. Surplus of insulin happens when there are too many carbohydrate type foods that bring up your blood sugar level. Your body then pumps out insulin. The types of foods that you're looking to bring down or avoid, up to yourself, are things like breads, potatoes, pastas, porridge, rice, bananas. I don't know if I said bananas, beers, etc. Anything that's grain-based, beige and white foods, essentially. It doesn't mean that you can never have them if you're going out for a special occasion, or as you'd say, do you know what, I actually really fancy that. There's no problem whatsoever. This is not an all or nothing approach. It is a way to work sustainably with your own body, with your own metabolism, with your own system, to give yourself a chance to not feel hungry, not feel tired, not feel that you have to be in that hamster wheel of, or pendulum swing actually is a better visual analogy, of feeling that you have to be perfect, and if you can't match that, you failed, and you're back in this side, and then you feel terrible, and you go back and back and back. I've seen that time and time and time again. I myself was very like that until I saw this is getting me nowhere fast. And my hope is that you found this helpful, to see that it's a lot less to do with placing blame on the individual. It's a lot more to do with working with our systems and being kind and compassionate to ourselves. Anyway, I've blabbered on now enough. I hope that you found this helpful, and I will be back with you guys next week. If you have any questions or comments, as always, I love to see them. And I will be back with you guys next week. I said that already. All right. Mind yourself, guys. Have a lovely rest of your day. All the best now. Bye.